Beastly Theories. I'm your host, Andy McGrath. Today's guests are Jen and Jena from the SHE-Squatchers, the Midwest first all-female team searching for Bigfoot. Their quest is to gather information, obtain credible evidence of Bigfoot, and ultimately establish contact and peaceful interaction. The team consists of a missing person psychic medium, animal communicator and remote viewer, Department of Natural Resources professional, and Native Americans. They're based primarily in Minnesota and North Dakota, and they investigate Bigfoot sightings in the American Midwest. Now, hello to my lovely friends. How are you? Great to see you.
Oh, hey. Wonderful. Wonderful seeing you too. I miss you.
I miss you guys, honestly. I mean, I've looked for some similar characters here in London since I've got back, but it's a no-go. I haven't found them.
Right? You'll never find anybody like us.
No. No, it was a fruitless and pointless exercise to begin
Well,
with.
I tell you what, you made our time at that event so much fun.
Well, I was going to say actually that a lot of people I noticed back there were very attracted to your stall and your characters, and you always had a little group around you. Maybe not buying things. I had that similar experience, but lots of chatty Cathys to keep us company. Now, I do have some questions for you. I do want to know all about how you do things. But to start off, for both of you, maybe you can both answer this individually. Yeah, I think for everyone involved in our crypto crazy world, there's a jumping off point that leads to this obsession. So what started you both off on this journey?
Jen, go ahead.
Well, Andy, I've been doing radio for quite a few years now, and I actually had a paranormal radio show, and I scored an amazing interview with Loren Coleman. And for those who don't know who that is, he's the cryptozoologist who has the Bigfoot Museum in the state of Maine in America. And so I actually didn't know much about Bigfoot when I interviewed him. And to be honest, I didn't believe in Bigfoot at all. But I recognize a great interview when I see one. So I was really excited to have him. As I was interviewing him for the show, I was so impressed by the things that he was sharing with me. And the passion that he had on the subject was just, I don't know what the word is. It was catchy. Contagious. Yeah. And he thought that the recipe for success in looking and finding Bigfoot would be to send women into the woods without men, dogs, or guns. And he thought that Bigfoot would naturally be attracted to coming in closer to get a better look at women for quite a few reasons. One of them being that he feels that women have a better rapport with the great apes because of, examples like Jane Goodall and her work with the chimpanzees. And he thinks that the human men have a pheromone that the great apes just don't like. And so he figured that would also perhaps also extend to Bigfoot, that they wouldn't like the pheromone that men give off. And there was another reason. He said that a lot of the sightings that people have along the roadsides, you never see a family unit of Bigfoots crossing the road. You usually just see one singular younger male who's probably out stretching his legs and going all the places he's not supposed to go, breaking all the rules. And he felt that these younger male Bigfoots would naturally be attracted to checking out some women if there were no threatening things there with them like men, dogs, or guns. So, I jokingly said, "Hey there, big boy, I'll volunteer for that." And but I was really just joking. But by the end of this interview that I had with him, I seriously volunteered. I was all gung-ho to go out there and try it. So that's how we started. It was all inspired by Loren Coleman.
So you were officially approved by the I've been calling him the King of Kong. He's told me not to call him that actually because it means something naughty apparently. Uh, so the King of Cryptozoology, the reigning king, anyway, at the moment, he inspired you. He stamped this with approval. He said, "Go do it."
I don't know if he stamped us with approval, but he's the one who inspired it.
Wow.
When we see him, we're always excited. And the last event that we saw him at, he was actually in a different room. They had two big rooms of tables where all the people were at. And he was in a different room, and I hadn't made it away from the booth to go see him yet. And he finally came over and brought his camera and asked if he could take pictures with us with our background. And so we were so excited about that. And he brought us a gift. So I felt like that was his little stamp of approval that he was excited for what we were doing.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, you know, how often does one make a suggestion and people just go ahead and make a successful group out of it? That's a compliment even for somebody like him. And what about you, Jen? How did you fall into this crypto crazy world yourself?
Oh boy, that's a good story, actually. Jen and I have been friends for quite a long time, and she never really mentioned the SHE-Squatchers to me. But when she finally did mention it, she happened to tell me about their expedition that they went on and how they went out to the woods and what they were doing and what they felt and what they saw. And, you know, I just thought, oh my gosh, I want to join this. And this is not only a group of girls that, you know, I'm looking for camaraderie with. This is also getting exercise and going to look for some truth that may not exist or may exist. When I first started this, started on this team, I was a complete skeptic. And I do have to say, after a lot of the different things that we've seen so far, it's teetering the opposite. So,
wow. I mean, it's for me, it's a similar journey actually. Some days I wake up and I'm going on an all-night investigation tomorrow night actually, where there's been a recent sighting, and I think, am I really going looking for Bigfoot in the British Isles? Like, am I an idiot? And then I talk to a witness and they're so compelling, and I think, oh, okay, so, you know, either this very sane, normal person is an amazing liar or a real fool for thinking that some person she or he has seen is a Bigfoot. Or there's something to it, you know, there's something there. Now, you mentioned Lauren talking about, or Jen mentioned Lauren talking about women being perhaps better suited for bringing in Sasquatch. Have you guys had any experiences like that interacting with Bigfoot? Has his concept been demonstrated to you yet?
Absolutely. You know, we always say we're doing the all-female Bigfoot experiment. And what would that be without occasionally going out with some guys to see how it's different? If it is different at all, right? So we have to try it both ways to see if there is a difference. And I'm telling you right now, there absolutely is. There absolutely is a big difference. Our very first expedition, and again, I didn't believe in Bigfoot at the time, but but I was open-minded to see if there was such a thing as Bigfoot. But I think sometimes people go out believing in Bigfoot already. So, I mean, here I was a skeptic going out to see, well, I'm open-minded, they'll see. But I grew up in the woods in Minnesota. And, I mean, I was a country girl growing up in the woods. I was in the woods all the time. And I had never seen anything that would lead me to believe that there was such a thing as Bigfoot. But on our very first expedition, we went out during the daytime. And we were going to select the locations that we were going to come back to after the sun went down. And so I didn't get to tell you earlier, but added on to Lauren's idea of sending women into the woods without men, dogs, and guns, I added my own idea because I am a psychic medium, animal communicator, and remote viewer. I'm also an energy healer, so I feel energy as a physical sensation in my entire body. And so everything has its own energy frequency that I can sense on a physical level. It's a physical sensation as strong as if I were to shake your hand or shake your whole body. Really, it's a whole body sensation. And
Don't shake me.
So don't shake you. So when we went out and we went out during the day, we were stopping along this road that there had been a sighting on this particular lake. like within a month before that. And we didn't know exactly where. All we knew was that it was at a boat launch, that somebody said it was at a public boat launch, and there was only one boat launch listed on the maps. And when I looked at that, I was like, that just doesn't feel like the right place to me. I don't think that was the place. But it was the only boat launch listed. Well, I said it makes more sense to me that Bigfoot would be on the other side of the lake where there are no homes and no people and no docks. I mean, that would just make the most sense to me. Well, we went driving on this road, and it's called Reservation Highway 20. And let me tell you, this is a one-car road. And if you meet a car on there, good luck, because one of you has to do some major backing up all the way to the front of the road. Because, and that better not be me, because I do not back up well.
I'm guessing there's no guardrail either.
There isn't, and the trees are right up on this little gravel roadway. And so it's only room enough for one car to traverse. So they have a reason they call it Reservation Highway 20. I don't know. It can't be a highway for real. It's more like a minimum maintenance road in my book. So we were driving up there, and we'd stop wherever I felt like this might be a place of interest. And there was one particular location that I marked on my GPS coordinates that I wanted to return to because I felt this interesting energy field there. It was my whole body vibrating at a frequency that I had not felt before. And so that got my attention. And although we didn't see any footprints there or anything else that would lead us to believe that Bigfoot might be there, just purely on the sensation of the energy, I marked that spot. And some of my other teammates were like, but we didn't find anything there. I'm like, don't care. I'm feeling something here. So we're coming back tonight. So, but we did up the road, probably a few miles. We found footprints on this gravel road, and we all just walked right past them. And something told me to turn around and look back. And I turned around and looked back, and you can see this whole stretchway of footprints. It's not deep enough to cast anything, but they were huge, and the stride was much more than I could even come close to doing when I would run next to them leaping. And I'm the tallest person on the team. I'm about 5'10". So I couldn't even come close to a running leap of matching that stride next to it. Now we were not prepared to find anything on our first expedition. We didn't have any casting material. We didn't even have a tape measure. I mean, this is how much we did not expect to find anything. And we were totally unprepared for that. But we returned later that night to that spot that felt that interesting energy at. And upon getting out of the car, I had my equipment ready in my hands. But the rest of my team had all of their equipment and packs in the back hatch of the vehicle. So when we got out of the car, one of my teammates handed me a FLIR thermal camera that she had borrowed from somebody else. She didn't know that it could take video. She thought it was just a camera that you'd click the trigger and take a picture. So that's what I knew about the camera as well. And so she handed it to me to play with until she got the rest of her equipment out the back. So I'm standing at the front of the vehicle, and I'm scanning the woods, and I'm looking for anything that's coming up as a thermal body heat. And all of a sudden I get to the where I'm pointing it out in front of the car, and there's something standing there coming up red and yellow on the thermal cam, and it's shaped like a humanoid person. And so I immediately assume one of my teammates grabbed her gear and walked out in front of the car. That made the most sense, right? So I said, oh, who's in front of the car? Nobody responded. And I'm like, hey, who's in front of the car? And nobody responded. And I kept asking that question with more and more anxiety in my voice, I guess. And one of my teammates, Marlo, she heard me, and she comes running up to the front to see what I was going on about. And she looked in the direction that I was pointing this camera, and she saw eyes. And she said, oh, I just saw eyes. And so I look up from the screen to see if I see eyes, and when I look back down, I can't find it anymore. I scanned everywhere and could no longer find it. So this was just upon us getting out of the car there at dark. I mean, just all we did was get out of the car, and there was something there. Wow. None of my teammates had been in front of the car. So then there was 5 of us that night, and we go to 3 of us. I was one of the 3 that were going to walk into the woods to the left of the car. And we start to walk into the woods a little bit, and all of a sudden we hear this sound coming down through the trees, something falling. And here there's something falling in front of us about 3 or 4 feet and bouncing. And I'm like, what is that? And we're looking. And here there were rocks, little rocks about the size of a 50-cent piece to American silver dollar size, were being lobbed down at us through the trees. And it wasn't like they were trying to hit us. It was very obviously that they were not trying to hit us with these rocks. But I just stopped and I was kind of in shock because I didn't even know that Bigfoot was known for throwing rocks at that time. I was clueless about that. I didn't know that that happened. All I knew is that I'm in the state of Minnesota where I grew up and spent my entire life in the woods and never before had anything thrown rocks at me before. And I'm just sitting there watching these rocks come down and bounce in front of us, and we're all just in kind of a shock. And so then I opened my awareness because I am a psychic medium, and part of my ideas on this were, can we find Bigfoot with our extra senses? Maybe it's an unfair advantage. But it's our advantage. You know, we're not as buff as a lot of these Bigfoot researchers that are going out into the woods and camping for weeks on end to go 20 miles in. You know, we don't do that. We're going to use what our skill set, which is our psychic abilities and our remote viewing abilities and sensing of energy, to see if we can find Bigfoot that way. And it's been working really well for us, obviously. And
clearly.
So, you know, when I opened my awareness to see what does this mean with the rocks coming down at us, and I just felt very clearly they didn't want us to walk into the woods that way. So we stopped and we went back over, and our other teammates had been standing in front of the car in the road, and so we decided, okay, we're going to go over to the right side of the car then. And one of our teammates did a Bigfoot whoop, and then we just waited to see, you know, what happened. And all of a sudden, something started walking towards us in the woods. You could hear it very clearly, snapping big sticks, you know, and it was bipedal, 2 feet walking, and just, you could tell it was a very large something.
Wow.
And we've got all of our cameras trained at where the sound is coming from. And we've got night vision cameras, IR cameras. We've got the thermal camera. And I think I call it a baby thermal camera because I think it's a lower end one, and wasn't ours anyway. But regardless, it still was picking up body heat, right? And we've got all these cameras, and we can't see anything there. Wow. And it's still walking towards us, and the sound's getting picked up on all of our video. We can hear it on the video, but we can't see anything coming.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, it seemed like it multiplied, and there was the same kind of sound was coming at us from different directions. And so now we felt like we're getting surrounded, and what do we do? And we'd never made a plan for what should we do if we feel like we're in trouble. But we circled up back to back, facing out, and I kind of looked at us for a moment, and I thought, wow, look at us, good girls. This is this is smart. And so I was kind of impressed with our automatic response to that, because we hadn't made a plan for what we would do, but it just happened automatically.
Good reflexes.
Fear instincts. And, it just kept coming, and we just kept looking to see, can we see it? And I know a lot of Bigfoot researchers would say this is a big no-no, but we turned on our big flashlights when our cameras and our night vision and thermal cameras were not working to see what's coming. We turned on our big buku flashlights to light up the woods, and we still couldn't see anything there.
Wow.
And, in Minnesota where we were at, most of the trees had been logged in the late 1800s or early 1900s by the settlers. And so the trees that were growing there, they were tall trees, but they weren't very wide. Not wide enough for something of large size could hide behind. Even a deer, if it was moving towards you, wouldn't be able to stay hidden from a thermal camera coming through the woods. So, it just didn't make any sense to us. What is going on here? And all of a sudden, one of my teammates said, Jen, do your tobacco thing. Well, here we were on a Native American reservation. And I am part Ojibwe. I'm part Native American. I know I look very light-skinned, but my mom's actually a member of the reservation. Card carrying. She's very dark. I have a very tall white father. But so I can speak some Ojibwe, and I took tobacco out into my hand and I gave an offering. And I called out to the little people of the forest, and I said, "Miigwech memwege," and basically thanking the little people. And then I called out to Bigfoot, and I said, "Miigwech gichisabe." And as soon as I said, "Thank you, Bigfoot," which, Ojibwe, everything just stopped. It didn't like go away. You didn't hear it retreating. You didn't hear it anything coming forward. It just stopped. And then we just stood there. We didn't know what to do. And one of my teammates says, "Okay, well, hey, what if we go check out where we found those footprints today?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So we jumped in the car and we left. Yeah. So, I mean, in hindsight, there's probably a ton of other things I would have done and differently, but that was our first time, and we were so shocked. And to be quite honest with you, some of our teammates got in the car because they were terrified.
Well, I think that's a very normal reaction, actually. And I had only probably one or two experiences where I thought that something was definitely there. And what happens to you in that experience, that moment, is that you suddenly think, well, okay, this is it. So if it's a creature and you've got to come face to face, you're both individuals, you have to make a decision about what to do in that situation. I always say this to people, actually. So what's going to happen? It's all up for grabs. Anything can happen. And the normal reaction is to want to get the hell out of there. Mm-hmm. I think that's perfectly normal. And I still feel that, actually. I had an experience recently where I thought, okay, I was up in Scotland, and I've mentioned this in the show a few times, actually, but I was up in some thick woods there near Loch Ness, and I thought I saw something, and then I hadn't heard anything for hours, and then I could hear sort of crunching through the trees and all this kind of stuff. Now, that's not a sighting to me. I could have heard deer. I could have freaked myself out, but the reality of the situation was I was an hour and a half away from getting down from that little mountain on foot, and I had to reconcile this possible coming experience to myself. Do you want it? Because if it's not friendly, you've got an hour and a half to go to get out. And I think that's the reality of it. Most people who go looking for animals like this don't think about what's going to happen if they find them. And do they want to be in that situation? Were you, Jenna, were you there then as well?
No, I wish I would have been there, but that was the first expedition. Now, that's what Jen was telling me about, and that's what made me want to go, okay, I want in. This is what I need to do. Because, in 2009, I basically died, and this is my second time around. So the second time around, I've lost that fear kind of a thing, and not to make stupid choices, but I've lost that fear to hold me back from things that I may have been scared to do before. So now, I get a chance to jump at something exciting and new, and I could be part of finding something that has never been proven before. I mean, paper, what I mean? It's never been proven before. So definitely, I this is what made me jump. So, no, I wish I would have been at that first one. Boy, oh boy, but I've been at every other one.
Yeah, so. No, that's amazing. And what do you do on the expeditions? Or what's your particular skill set? What's your interest in the research? Where do you concentrate?
Where do I concentrate on as far as
your skills? What do you do with the expedition?
Okay, well, I hear, feel, and communicate with spirit. I also run a lot of the equipment. Jen always says I'm fearless because, and I always say, Jen, I'm not just fearless. You got to find something else to tell people about me, because, and I'm psychic, but I don't like the word psychic. I actually, I call it receiver of information, because I don't think psychic, it has so many negative connotations to it. So, I feel that I'm a receiver of information, and when I get that information, whether it's information or a message from someone who has passed to give to someone else, or whether it's me helping a spirit cross over, it comes to me at the time that it's needed. So it's nothing that I sit and ask for. So I basically keep myself open to receive, and when it's time, I'm given whatever I need. It's put in front of me. So definitely that. And then, like I said, I work with the equipment, and I love equipment. I have to stop myself from buying more because I just, and honestly, people don't need all that much equipment.
You don't. You really don't.
No, so don't be like me. Don't go out and buy a bunch of crap.
I'm on the reverse actually, so because I'm terrible with technical equipment. So I have like a GoPro and a camera, and I take my mobile, and half the time I end up just getting out my mobile for like a little walk around, a little walk around in the daytime. And I just keep looking at the camera, you got GoPro. Why don't you crack these things out and have a look? I'm just that's for a setup. This is a wonder. I don't know about you, but with this psychic thing, and I know that's not anything I haven't experienced with, and you obviously said a receiver of information. Would you say that's more of would you describe it more like a spiritual instinct then, that you're tying just things that are going on in the other realm? Now I know that remote viewing is mentioned with part of the technique that you guys employ. Is that something you both do, or is it just you, Jen? How do you employ these skills together in this area of research?
Well, I know that. Well, Jen, go ahead.
I'm the main remote viewer, and I wondered if I could teach others to do it, and I've been teaching Jenna to do it, and she's learning. So when I start to see something on, the way I'm remote viewing, I call it geographic remote viewing, because I'm pulling up satellite imagery or Google Earth, Google Maps to look at satellite imagery of locations, and I'm scanning them asking, is Bigfoot here? Is there any Bigfoot here, or is there any Bigfoot evidence that we could collect here? And then what I see changes on the screen in reaction to what I'm asking. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else would see it, but after I taught Jenna what I'm looking for, and to hold that awareness, looking for a response to that question, and I say, do you see anything here? And she can point out what I'm seeing.
Wow.
So
it's right away too that I see that. It's not like I have to sit and focus, She's taught me very well.
Yes,
amazing.
yes.
I mean, I'm just very interested in it because it's a very original research method, and I've never heard of it before. And in fact, when Jen mentioned it to me at the conference, I do a lot of remote viewing. I thought that she had sort of some kind of online live access to game cams that she posted around these locations. I thought she's remote viewing. Of course she is. She's got these game cams. This must be some great tech she's got. There she's remote viewing by her little game cams around the place. She said, no, I'm like, it's like a psychic thing. And it's not something I understand a lot about, but it was really, really different. I thought, okay, this is different. This is really original. Here they are, out in the woods, having some, I know premonition's the wrong word, but that's the only way I have to describe it, a premonition about the location that they should visit, and going there and getting some results. I mean, that sounds like a great format, really, for a show, if you ask me.
Oh, thanks. We think so too.
Yeah.
But
Right?
But to be honest with you, I had been doing remote viewing for paranormal investigative teams for a few years. And the team that I was working the most with, I was actually living about 3.5 hours drive away from. So I didn't get to go with them on location very often in person. But a lot of times they would give me the GPS coordinates of the location they were going to look at and investigate, or an address. And I would remote view it and ask all kinds of questions about the location. And what I would see on the image would change, and I would write down what I was seeing, and it would respond to the questions that I asked. And we discovered that I was so accurate, that I had a full belief in this ability when we started using it for Bigfoot. Because then I thought, when we started to look for Bigfoot, I'm like, can I remote view the woods and find a Bigfoot before we even go there, and just drive as close as we can get to the place and pop out and be like, here we are, a surprise, Bigfoot. And
I think that method is my preferred method. But I don't know much about the remote viewing side, but the getting there and there he is or she is, it is my preferred method. Because I was a researcher, this kind of going out in the woods thing, or to lakes or whatever, that's a newer part of my experience. So I've a lot to learn. I always kind of believe if I got 20 miles out in the woods by myself, I'd probably never come back. So presently, anyway, so a bit of remote viewing would suit me right down to the ground.
And honestly, that's kind of what Jen was talking about when she's talking about, we use what we have and we don't have to go hiking for 20 miles.
Yeah.
We do this and we use what we have. So yeah, it definitely is a new technique used out here. You know, it would be neat to find out if anyone else has been using the same technique. So if you have, let us know, because we'd love to compare notes.
Oh,
But
for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
Really
Absolutely.
interesting. That I've primarily been looking in the state of Minnesota, where, you know, I'm part Native American, and we were usually looking on Native American reservations, and so I was wondering, am I accessing ancestral knowledge, and would I have the same ability somewhere else where I don't have any native ancestors at? And so I was kind of wishing to look at a location that I wasn't familiar with the foliage or the trees or had any ancestors at. And then a researcher out of North Carolina contacted me on Facebook and asked me if I could remote view a specific forest for him. And it was almost as if he was responding to my wish. and I said I would love to. And so he gave me GPS coordinates to this particular forest, and I started to look at it, and particular areas started to pop up. It takes me a little while to remote view a large area. What I did, because I had wanted to try this out, and they had different kinds of trees and foliage than I was used to seeing. It took a little bit of an adjustment for that. But all of a sudden I started to see a Bigfoot jumping up and down next to the body of water. And so I took a screenshot of the map and circled that area, saying there's one who like really frequents this area. You could probably spot him right here on the shoreline if you watched it long enough. And then I circled another area. I said they cross the road here a lot. Right here, they're crossing all the time, because they actually live across the road in the forest over there, but they come over to the water right here. And I did a whole bunch of screenshots, and I'm circling areas and telling him what I'm seeing there. And then he started to reply, and he's sending me video from on the ground at those locations that I was sending him. He said they do cross the road right there. That is exactly where they cross the road. And I didn't know that he had already been researching this area, but everything I said, he backed it up, and it had video in that moment with from on the ground. So that was really fun for me to be able to test out an area that I'd never been to. And you know, I'm in Minnesota, I'm remote viewing North Carolina. That's really far.
It is far. I mean, it really is, and it's amazing that you get those kind of results as well. You mentioned your Native American background, actually your ancestry. Now, I'm kind of curious to know, are there Native American legends with the Ojibwe in your area of these types of creatures? You mentioned the little people earlier as well when we gave your tobacco offering. If yes, which I'm assuming is the answer, what are their names and what kind of descriptions do they have in Native American legends of the Ojibwe?
There are different names for the little people, and because there's different kinds of little people.
Huh.
I called out to the Memwegweshik, which are the ones that seem most helpful to me. And I always feel like they kind of protect me in the forest or in the water or wherever I am in some kind of a natural world. I feel like they're there. And the Bigfoot has different names in the Ojibwe language. Gichisabe is the main name. Misabe is another name. It means like giant man or giant hairy man. And Gichisabe actually means great honesty, because they say that Bigfoot lives the most honest life that there is. And what's really interesting is that the Ojibwe 7 teachings of the grandfathers, which is kind of like the equivalent of the 10 Commandments in Christianity, each one of the 7 sacred teachings from the grandfathers is represented by an animal. And so like love is represented by the eagle, humility is represented by the wolf. But what was really interesting was that Bigfoot was representing honesty. So all of the other categories were represented by an animal that we've all known, seen to exist. And then they have Bigfoot representing honesty. So this is a creature that they don't think maybe exists. They know that Bigfoot exists.
Yeah. Now that's interesting to me. Actually, now stereotypically, my perception of Native American or First Nations names of animals or things is that they represent the characteristic of the thing itself. Is that correct with the Ojibwe as well? Would that be representative of how they name things? So
Yes.
honesty, it actually represents the characteristic of the creature itself and how it lives in the way that you
Yes.
mentioned.
An
I think
honest life compared to how humans live. We don't really live a very honest life in connection with our planet anymore, you know.
No,
But
we certainly don't.
yeah.
Well, I think that's incredibly interesting, especially with the little people. You know, that's something I think corresponds to fairy myths here in the UK and in Europe, and I think Native Americans and Australian Aborigines and people all around the world seem to have a similar version of little people as well. That seem, for the most part, have similar characteristics worldwide. And moving on from that type of thing to cryptozoology itself, I wanted to ask you both about your experiences in this world. You obviously go to a lot of conferences, you do a lot of shows, so it tends to be a little male-centric in its population. Do you think this is more to do with typical gender interests, or is it more because it's some type of exclusive boys-only club that admits very few women into its ranks? And making you feel female representatives now full time.
You
Answer
know,
for all women.
and I'll answer first, because I'm sure, Jen, you've got a
Yeah.
wonderful answer too. But I do have to say I was a little bit worried about entering into a pretty much male-dominated a male-dominated, I can't even say it's a fantasy, but a male-dominated field. Thank you. So it was a little bit manipulating. You know, I felt a little bit manipulated there, but that was all before I met them. I was nervous. I was scared. You know, there's so many things that could have happened. But the minute we walked in to these events, the first event, we were welcomed with open arms like you would never, ever expect. Yeah. And all my thoughts and worries and concerns, boom, they were gone. Every single person said, wow, you're doing a great job. We can't wait to hear more. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us your stories. And people were genuinely interested in what we do as a group of females. So, Jen, I'll let you answer that one too.
I think that's a great answer. That's what I expected, actually. And it was at the same for you, Jen, too.
Yes, I really have been accepted with open arms. And sometimes the guys are even concerned for our safety. We've had quite a few, you know, when they hear that we go out without weapons of any kind, without dogs and without men, they a lot of the Bigfoot researchers in America are going out armed for their self-protection, not that they want to shoot Bigfoot, but that there's a lot of animals in the forest that they feel that they could be attacked by, and so they want to have it for self-defense if they should need it.
Bears and cougars and things.
Yes, and wolves and whatever else, Bigfoot, aggressive Bigfoot. But you know, when they hear we don't go out with weapons, there have been a lot of guys that have been like, seriously, you need to get a gun. You need to have this because there are dangerous animals out there and you could get killed. And you know, some people have really scolded us for not going out with anything to protect ourselves with. Since then, you know, I got a little air horn. You know, I have an air horn. You know, Jenna, you're on mute.
I was just going to say I have a whistle too. It's a hunting whistle. So when that thing goes off, but you know, Jen had mentioned that these other hunters, they were concerned about our safety, but they didn't only explain that they were worried about animals. They said humans we had to worry about too, because we were a few ladies out in the woods and we had to be able to protect ourselves. So
weird hunters out there, gone a bit strange.
Definitely.
Overexcited by a few ladies out in the woods without any firearms. I mean,
but luckily,
the firearm thing is very weird for us. We don't have many dangerous animals here, or any really official ones, and nobody has guns. So we're just not used to thinking in that respect.
So when are you going to invite us down to go squatching in your area then?
Whenever you like. I mean, that's well, that was hopefully going to answer my last question, actually. But I think you would really love it. It'd be a very different environment. I would probably try to take you guys to some more rural areas where there's been sightings, but a lot of our sightings are quite close to towns. That's the same in the US as well. You know, on the outskirts of villages and big towns. And even in this area, Surrey, County of Surrey that I live in, which is very green, but it's mostly, there's forests and things, it's mostly rolling hills and, you know, lots of open land. There's been quite a few sightings here. In fact, I'm going next door to Kent tomorrow night to investigate a sighting. There's been several in a place called the Medway. That's a river that connects to the Thames estuary near London. And there's been several Bigfoot sightings there in the last few years. Very, very clear. And the one that occurred the other week was by a very trusted friend. His wife saw it walking along the edge of the horse paddock, which it borders a disused railway line. There's about a 30-foot drop. We measured, you know, the height of the dark figure she saw next to the bushes. It walked along, and it must have been over 7 feet. The bushes that she said it was above. And there you go. You know, it's just one of those interesting things. Now that's a very rural, open area, but it's completely flat. It's just flat and grassy, and has different estuaries and rivers running all over the place. But you would love it anyway. We'd find lots of places to take you, and of course, you know, we'd give you lots of English hospitality while you're here as well.
Oh, I love it. I would love to come down there. You make sure and let anybody who knows about us that we want to come down.
Oh,
so.
yeah. Yes, I mean, well, if what I have planned for the Beast of Britain TV series, if somebody picks that up at some point, I definitely want to get lots and lots of guest researchers in, and we could get you guys to remote view some kind of location for us and try out the technique and just, you know, bring it in, see what we can find. We do have, you know, lots of anecdotal reports here, but very few footprints and hairs and things. There are some, but not many. Now, these close experiences that you've had, we talked about it earlier, with out in the woods. You know, you're out there, there's cougars, there's bears, you don't have any firearms, there's perhaps a few weird hunters wandering around, you know, cabin fever. Do you ever get scared? Was there ever a time, well, not with a Bigfoot, but maybe where you thought you had a bear prowling around or a cougar, you know, stalking you? Have you ever had experiences like that?
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Well, okay. First of all, with bears, I'm not afraid of bears, really. And Jenna had a fear of bears, and we actually did a whole expedition where we were getting close to the bears, and I'm talking like a car length away from the bears.
Wow.
And we
black bears.
Black bears. That's what we have in Minnesota. Now, these particular bears, I knew that they were, because they feed at this garbage dump. They see people and they think, oh, goody, they're bringing me more food. They don't see the people as food. They are the bringers of the food. It's my waitress. Okay. She's bringing more food. Okay. And so, you know, we were able to be outside of the car, and Jenna walked right up to the dumpster where one was inside of, and she plopped in a bag of garbage that had some Twinkies in it. And
they like Twinkies, huh?
I even unwrapped them for the bear. I was like, oh, you don't want them to have to unwrap them. I'm just going to unwrap them. And I told Jen, I said, please, will you videotape me doing it? She goes, yeah, sure. So I get back to the car and I'm thinking, oh, man, that was so scary, you know. And I was like a foot away from the bear. And I said, let me see the video. She gets it of the bear. All you could see of me is my arm. I was like, no.
Jen.
She went so quickly. I wasn't ready. I'm like, yeah, and then she just went really fast, and I was like, no, I'm not ready.
So this is the animal communicator in you. You focused on the bear straight away. You're like, yeah, that's my friend, but look at this lovely bear.
And it was a mama bear too. Oh. She was a mama bear.
Oh, they were cubs there?
Yeah. And the next weekend I returned. Yeah, we were there long enough where at night after the sun went down, we couldn't see anything, so we were really dependent upon our night vision cameras and stuff like that. And when we look into these night vision equipment, it really messes with your ability to see anything in the dark. So we decided the best thing is one of us used the equipment, the other one was like a lookout that didn't look into the bright stuff, so that we could still see in the dark a little bit. And so there was one point in the night where there was a bear that got probably, I don't know, 6 feet from the car before I saw him.
Wow.
And we're sitting in there with, you know, the windows wide open and food in the car.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Yeah. But also the next weekend I went back there to get more footage during the day. Because we did a stakeout. We were there all night. Overnight. And I started sneezing at one point outside of the car, and they didn't even look at me. I mean, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's just them." They'd gotten so accustomed to us being there, they didn't even look over when I was sneezing.
They're interested in the dump. That's where the goodies are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next weekend I went back and I got out of the car and set up my tripod camera, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden here comes these 3 baby cubs and a mama bear.
Wow.
And the baby cubs came into the area and they just stopped. They looked at me and they were like, "Oh, it's her again. No big deal." And they just went on their business and jumped in a dumpster. And
I think they're quite bright, bears. They're quite intelligent.
And they're like, "Oh, it's just her again." And so they had gotten to know who I was. And we're just like, no big deal. Where usually the baby bears were a little more skittish than the older bears. I mean, there was one point we had 4 very, very large bears all around us, and it was really, really cool. And
you were outside of the car at this point.
Sometimes we were outside of the car. Yeah. Sometimes we were inside because it was kind of cold, but we had our windows open so that we could, hanging out the window with the equipment and,
And what was the theory here, hanging out at this dump that maybe in the same way that the bears are using the garbage for food, that maybe a Bigfoot would come in too?
Well, because we had found Bigfoot areas not very far away from that, in through the woods, I figured that Bigfoot was probably feasting there too. And so I hope to maybe get something in the dark by leaving our presence there for so long and getting like the bears used to us being there, that we were not a threat. We're kind of hoping Bigfoot would think the same way, that we're not a threat, and just come on in and carry on with their business because we're just hanging out. No big deal. We're not bugging them at all. That was our hope. And I think that if we could spend a lot more time there on a regular basis, I think that would probably work. So there was something in back in the woods. I just couldn't zoom in on it enough to get anything definitive. And we didn't feel like we should be walking back there where all the bears are going.
No.
And it was funny because sometimes the bears would come in and they would grab a bag of garbage and they would take it out into the woods. And I'm like, "Are you taking that back to Bigfoot?" I was just joking, but then there was another time we went on an expedition in a state park in Nebraska, and we had done a whole bunch of night stuff. And when we were done, we were just kind of sitting on a picnic table in the dark, and we're just visiting. We turned off the equipment. We're done for the night, right? And all of a sudden we hear "Rawr," like a big cat.
Wow.
And we all just
feet away.
Feet away.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it did another "Rawr," and I said, "That sounds like a big cat. Get to the car."
That's a. I mean, if it wanted you, it would have just pounced. So that's a get out of here kind of growl.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so everybody took off running for the car, and it was so muddy there because there had been so much rain going on that I almost slipped and went face first in the mud. I barely caught myself. But we got mud all over our rental car. It was confusing. But that was a big scare. I definitely am feeling very cautious of cougars. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the main things here is because there are so many big cat sightings. Either what we would call pumas, I guess, cougars, or panthers, melanistic leopards. There are so many sightings that when I'm out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, I'm primarily thinking, is that, am I going to see a big cat? What's that noise? Could that be a big cat creeping up on me? I haven't been in the attacks here. There's so many food sources around for them to even consider human would be quite silly, but still, it's a possibility. We do that they're around at the moment. So, yeah, cougars, terrifying. Those big cats, really, really terrifying. I'd much rather meet Bigfoot in the dark than a cougar any day.
I agree.
Coming to your areas of Minnesota and North Dakota, you're primarily researching Bigfoot in those areas. Are these areas home to more than just Bigfoot? Are there any other cryptid sightings around those areas?
Oh, yes, I've seen the North American hyena.
Wow, really?
Yes, yes. And before I was even into any Bigfoot research or any kind of cryptid research whatsoever, I had spotted this. It was running with a pack of wild dogs on a reservation, and I saw it 2 years in a row. And every time I saw this, I would point at it and say, that looks like a hyena to me. That does not look like a dog. And, people are like, oh, it has to be a dog. There can't be hyenas here. Now, I didn't know how big hyenas were supposed to be because I'd only seen them on TV. So I looked it up, and hyenas are supposed to be as big or a little bit bigger than wolves. And this was definitely made, at least half the size of a wolf.
Okay.
So it was smaller than like an African hyena. But then I ran into a native gentleman on a different Indian reservation, and he said that he had seen a hyena.
Wow.
And that he called it into the Department of Natural Resources to let them know that he saw the hyena that must have escaped from some zoo. And so he wanted to report where he saw it so they could go collect it. And they said, there is no missing hyena from anywhere. And he goes, there has to be, because I just saw one very clearly. It crossed the road and I had to stop my car, and it stood there and looked at me and kept on going. I got a very clear look at it. It was a hyena. And when I asked him how big was it, he said, well, I said, was it wolf size? And he said, no, it was smaller than a wolf. And so he was describing the very same thing that I saw. And then, we discovered together that there was such a thing known as the North American hyena that is supposed to not actually exist anymore. But there was old native stories of it.
Oh, that it was indigenous?
That there was old native stories about it, but it wasn't like a proven species.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's like
That's
a cryptid.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's a very, very. I've never ever heard that before. Actually, that's a really interesting sighting.
So I know a few people who've seen it that I was like, look at that. That looks like a hyena to me, and they agreed it looks like a hyena.
Do the Ojibwe have legends about the Wahila? Something similar to the Wahila, that giant. It's kind of similar to Black Shuck here, I think, like a giant dog or wolf-like creature.
A dog man.
Really, really huge. I mean, like pony-sized.
Oh, like a dog man?
No, like an actual dog. But a wolf, in fact. I think it's supposed to be very similar to that. I equated it to the Black Shuck sightings here, at least in the way that it appears, like a large black dog about the size of a pony. And I actually had a sighting, I think from Washington, actually, that was given to me by a First Nations lady very recently. And she said it was very emaciated, but it was about the size of a pony. It was a huge, huge wolf.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very curious. That was the first time I've ever heard about that.
Did anything come of that, or was she the only witness that came forward?
She was driving home at night, and she saw it crossing the road, just in her headlights, and it just went off. She seemed to. I mean, she told me about it. I was unfamiliar with this concept, but she said it was. She's seen them before. Other people have seen them. It's not particularly unknown, but it's rare. And she said, I felt sorry for the animal because it was so emaciated. And she drew me a picture, the ribs sticking out and whatnot. And the picture just looked like an emaciated wolf. And I often wondered sometimes about First Nations experiences and legends and sightings, about the concept of the animals that have been described. Do First Nations people often think that they're supernatural beings? Or in the case of Bigfoot, for example, another people, or just another one of the animals that inhabit their environment? How do they perceive of these things?
A lot of the native peoples, when they see Bigfoot, they take it as a personal message to them, that there's something spiritual that is a message to them. So they usually go see their spiritual advisor to interpret that message and what that means to their life. And that's a lot of times why Bigfoot sightings on reservations by native peoples are not reported to the BFRO or to other Bigfoot groups, because they're going to talk to their spiritual advisor about it. It never gets reported to places like us. Now, because I'm part Native American and I'm affiliated with my tribe, sometimes they will come and tell me about things, and I've had some amazing reports. And there was a couple, an elder couple that I know from my mom's reservation. up on the Red Lake Indian Reservation in northern Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And their grandchildren had found what they called a really cool fort in the woods. It was just a fantastic, cool fort. And they were so excited. They had gone home and told their grandparents all about it. And he said, I want you to show me this fort. So they took their grandfather back out there. And he said it blew his mind. He said something had pulled 2 large trees out of the ground, roots and all, and took them roots up, flipped them upside down, and teepeed them together with the roots together.
Wow.
And he says they were huge trees. What could pull them out of the ground like that?
Yeah.
And then you walk underneath that, and you just keep going back into the woods off of this little trail that he actually made this trail to go back and collect downed wood for fire. He made the trail to drive on himself. So he says you just keep walking back off the trail there until you see like this hogan structure. And I said, can you describe what that looks like? He said it's kind of like a wigwam, a rounded structure, but it's made completely out of sticks and trees that are weaved together, not tied or nailed or anything like that, but they're just weaved very, very intricately together and very intelligently put together to make this den-like structure. And he said that there was a doorway, but there was no door. And so when you enter the door, you look in, and he said there's quite a large area on the ground that for a few large creatures could lay down on. And then at the back of this structure, there was a big hole in the ground that went down into a cave/tunnel system.
Wow.
That when his granddaughters had found this, they had gone down in it.
Oh gosh. Oh dear.
And so when he looked down that hole, he didn't go down in there, but when he looked down in there and realized his granddaughters had been in there, he was horrified.
Yeah, of
because
course. Yeah.
He said, I think we almost lost our granddaughters that day.
Yeah.
Because even if whatever built that isn't there anymore, something else could have moved in, and my granddaughters could have gone in there where it was at or gotten trapped down underground.
Yeah.
And so he told them very clearly, if you ever see anything like this again, you're not to go anywhere near it. You're to tell me right away, but don't go near it. Don't go in it. That's very, very dangerous. And this was less than a mile from their house.
Wow.
And, it's very interesting because Native peoples are very one with the forest. As a little child, I was often walking through the woods for miles by myself. I mean, this was encouraged.
Wow.
This was the life that we lived, and we collected natural foods. I mean, I can walk through the forest and pick you up food to eat. I was always out mushroom hunting and looking for, different things to put in a salad and things like that. This is how I was raised. And so for a Native people to be telling their granddaughters to be afraid of the woods is quite unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, it's a serious warning, it sounds like, and I'm picking up the vibe and the cultural practices there, and I think, yeah, definitely that they're telling you that that's a serious issue. I think for any father or a grandparent to see a huge structure that would take massive power to build out there in the woods very close to your house would cause you alarm, because it denotes intelligence, doesn't it? And skill too, as well as power. Now, guys, although we've got to go in a minute, I do want to ask you both one final question. So I ask everybody the same question. It's if you could search for any cryptid in any country with any 3 people, living or dead, and it don't have to be researchers, anybody at all, and I'll ask you both individually, what would you search for? Where would you search? Which 3 people would you take?
Other than our team?
Well, it can be a team if you want to.
Like our team, or other than our team?
It could be your team or anybody you choose. It's like a dream team. It could be researchers that passed on, people you already respect. It could even be somebody you like to have around.
Oh boy. So we could look for anything, anywhere, with anyone.
Any location in the world. Money is no object. Any cryptid, any location, any 3 people. I have to point out at this point, I'm not going to pay for this expedition. Why don't you tell me what it is? But I can't, unfortunately. But I would, obviously, if I could. But it's not, I'm not finding out what your itinerary is. But what would it be? Jen, if you go first, what's your dream cryptid and location with your awesome team of 3 researchers, living or dead?
Living or dead? Oh boy.
Or both.
Or both. I think, I'm really into Bigfoot, and I think I would want to be looking for Bigfoot. Where? That's a good question. I love looking for Bigfoot everywhere. But we do dream about coming over and going out looking with you over in England, and maybe going to see Loch Ness.
Oh, yeah.
Or the, what is it, Bow Nessie?
Oh, yeah, Lake Windermere. You'd like that, but there's 31,460 lochs and lochans in Scotland, and they're all very close to each other. They'd be spoiled for choice for numerous lakes to visit while you're up there.
I just think that finding a lake monster might be a little bit more difficult than finding Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah, sure. More room to hide in, for sure. I was up there very recently. I was up there in January after a recent sighting. I walked around the whole area, and it was still remarkably pristine and unspoiled. I was in one of the most populated villages along Loch Ness, which has a residential population of 600 people.
Wow.
And that's the second biggest village in that area, apart from the town of Inverness, which is quite populated. And you look out at night into the dark, and this is a huge tourist area, 250,000 tourists a year. And you see the odd light off in the distance, but it is black. Most of the loch is obscured by trees, or the road on, I think they call it the south side, it's the other side, that goes up into the hills and skirts around the loch. So it's actually, most of it you can't actually see from the road. You have to be on the water. And there's lots of other lochs that come up with it. It's wonderful. But anyway, I digress, because you mentioned Loch Ness, and that's my trigger food. So who would your team be?
Well, I can't go out without Jenna. She's my fearless. She's my fearless one, and she may not think that's the big deal, but it really, really is. And we've gone through so many team members that, to be honest, just didn't cut it. And Jenna truly is the fearless one in our team. Even though Tammy, our newest member, is trying to fight Jenna to take over the role of the fearless one, so they kind of have a thing going on now that they're like, no, I'm the fearless one. So
I told Tammy, I got this, girl.
Oh, yeah.
It's all mine.
Listen, you've died once, you're afraid of nothing now.
Right? What else can I be afraid of? I mean, come on.
Head honcho fearless, number 1.
Right? I mean, Jenna goes into structures after rocks have been thrown towards us, and it's just like, I can't fathom it. I'm like, what are you thinking? But she wants to go in there. Okay, fine. And here's me. I wouldn't go in there, but so
amazing.
Well,
Jenna, I'm assuming, obviously, Jen said come to the UK and look for things here, and that is your dream expedition as well. I'd love to make that reality. But is there a particular cryptid you've always had an interest in, and in a particular location, like the orang pendek or the almas in Russia, or anything else? Or is it the North American Sasquatch? Is that your number 1?
When I was younger, the first cryptid I really, really kind of found out about, and I knew about Bigfoot. I had heard about the Loch Ness, I've heard about all those things, but the one that I had really started thinking about really being real was the chupacabra.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I was really interested in that. But now that I've been searching and going out and squatching, I can't think of anything more that I'd like to prove exists than Bigfoot. And as far as people that I'd like to go with, Jen, Tammy, and Jane Goodall.
Oh, wow.
That's who I'd like to go with.
Yeah, that's cool.
Definitely.
I know another one that I would like to go with, Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International.
Ooh.
Okay.
He's in Ireland, and he's been researching what he calls the others, and he classifies them all into one category, with that Bigfoot, the little people, aliens, interdimensionals, whatever they are. He calls them the others. And talking with him on a one-on-one situation was fascinating for me. And I think it would be really fun to go to Ireland and go out with him and see the things that he's been looking at and experience that. Although he did say that if you go out without any equipment, you have a lot more interaction than as soon as you turn something on, they're just gone. And so, and I've seen that to be true too, because there was one day that I first had my monocular, my night vision monocular, and we just got it. I didn't know how to use it. Jenna's kind of our tech girl, and she's the one who knows how to use everything. And so she turned it on and handed it to me, and I looked at this bush looked kind of at the bush next to me, and I saw something there waving at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do you make this thing record? And and we were seeing little people there. Wow. We both saw them, but as soon as we turned on record, they were gone.
You know what? Any detail?
Huh?
Could you make out any detail with those little people?
Oh yeah.
Close.
I have to tell you what I saw. And at this point, I had never seen anything like this, right? Wow. So when Jen and I were sitting there, I had one of the binoculars, which one did I have, Jen? I think I had yours. Did I have
you might have had the monocular, yeah.
Okay, needless to say, I had a piece of equipment, night up style, and I was looking at these bushes that Jen was explaining about. And as I was looking, I was just kind of zoning out, staring. And I thought I saw, I kept looking and I thought, that looks like that can't be. It looked like a gnome. And I thought, that's so weird. And so I sat there and stared at it. And all of a sudden it went, and I went, oh, because I've never seen, it freaked me out. I'm not kidding you. I was like, Jen, oh my gosh, it just moved. And she was like, yep. And I was like, no, you don't get it. I have never seen it move like this. Seriously, it moved so crisp and swiftly. I was shocked. I was like freaking me out at the time. So ever since that, yeah, I know.
Those are real.
That's really interesting to me, actually. Jenna, tell me about the height, the description, skin, hair, clothes, anything you noticed when you saw them, because that's fascinating.
When the one that I saw, it looked like a gnome. He had the hat, the outline of a hat. You could see. Wait, let me picture him. Yeah, he was just an outline, and he had, I could tell he had the nose and the beard, and it's almost like I could see everything, but there was a dark cover over him. Does that make sense? He was just kind of there. And so I saw detail, but it was covered with dark.
I understand. Yeah.
And so, and he had his pants and his shirt and his boots, but it was his face. And I did that wrong, because he was like this. That's what it was. And then he went, and that's when I freaked out. That's what it was. I wasn't like this. That, like I said before.
No, but that's so interesting, because those tales, they're all around the world. And you probably heard of the Hulderfolk in Iceland. Now in Iceland, they believe, even the government believes in these little people so much that they live in these big rock outcroppings so much that they'll even replan roads to go around these rock outcroppings. And they won't disturb a Hulderfolk residence. Now, Iceland's a small place, I understand that. It's a very modern country. Very, very modern Scandinavian country. And you don't get to disturb the Hulderfolk. You have to go around. That's the way it goes here. I think that's fascinating. And we've had those stories here for time beyond count.
But it's so incredible, though, putting a story and then seeing it. You know what I mean?
That would have freaked me out. What height were they? What do you say, about 2 feet?
Oh, no. The one that I saw probably was about 3.5 feet.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because the weeds were about 4 feet, weren't they, Jen?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure, because I was sitting down, and next to these bushes, we had found some Bigfoot footprints going up this gravel pit, and we had decided to cast them, and so we had cast the ones halfway up the hill, and we realized we need some more equipment to bring the cast down safely from this very steep hill. So Jenna and I volunteered to stay behind to protect our casts, while the rest of the team that was there drove away to get more materials in the only car that we had, and the sun was going down. And so I was fine with it until they left, and I started to hear movement in the bushes and the trees nearby. And then I was like, okay, we're right here where we got these huge big footprints going up here, and we might not be alone here.
Yeah.
And
Fearless ones again. Yeah.
and here's me going, maybe this wasn't a good idea. We have no cover, we have no car.
Wow.
And we have a bag of treats. I brought treats like granola bars and protein bars. And Jen said, okay, that's a new rule because we learn as we go. There's always a learning curve. And she goes, okay, that's a new rule. No bag of treats when we're out by animals. So that's definitely a new rule.
Down next to me and she's mowing on these treats. And she goes, you want some? I said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And I said, if a bear or something comes out at us, you better throw that bag as far away from us as you can get because you smell like treats right now and I don't.
Yeah. And no, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's such a strange consideration again over there. You're looking, and it's such a different situation. Well, officially anyway, that you're looking for unknown animals that could possibly be dangerous in a land that has many known animals that are dangerous. I was speaking to a researcher that goes looking for Lake Champlain, the champ monster, recently. He lives in Florida, and I was asking him, well, why don't you go out in Florida? There's some sort of skunk ape reports, and I'm sure there's a river monster report there too. And he said it's just too dangerous. There are massive pythons and alligators everywhere. You prefer to travel, several hundred miles to Lake Champlain to look for this creature in a body of water. It doesn't harbor a bunch of other animals that might want to kill him. So I think it's a very different situation. And I would like to get back to the US to do some more investigations in the future. But I think bears, that would be my real test, because I'm similar to you, Jenna. I'm not a bear fan. I don't like things that can run as fast as horses and dig and swim and climb trees. I think I don't like those odds.
Yeah. But you know what? I think if you were to come out with Jen and I around this area where we were actually hanging out with the bears and just, kind of just keeping our eye out and squatching at the same time, I think you'd be really surprised. And I really honestly think you'd be able to throw away a bag of Twinkies yourself and be like 2 feet away from a bear. But it was kind of scary because when I did actually throw it in the bin, the bear jumped out. And I was like, oh, that was the second time. But
yeah.
no, I think you could do it.
I could do it. I mean, I can run pretty fast, but I gotta, sure.
You'd be running faster than us, so don't worry. You'd be like out of there. We'd be like, oh man.
I mean, I'm famously bad at running. In fact, if you ever see me running, you should also start running. It's a sign that something very bad has happened. In the street, anywhere cool.
I'm the slowest one on the team, so I'm always the one who's going to be left behind as a sacrifice. And
you think that?
She always says she's going to take one for the team, and we're like, oh right.
Yeah,
not really though. We'd never leave her.
Yeah,
huh?
No, we wouldn't leave you. I mean, if we had to, we'd be sad about leaving you, Jen. Obviously, we'd feel bad about it, but we'd appreciate your sacrifice.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
See?
Well, when the team was running for the car when we heard the big cat going, rawr, nobody was like, Jen, come on. They were all for themselves. They were bear lining. I mean, and I always said, if there's a big cat, don't run. Don't run. Just walk.
Walk away facing them. Don't
walk away
in your back.
But don't run. And everybody just took off running.
But I have to make something clear though, because I never get worried unless Jen says, oh my gosh, let's go. And she usually is very calm. And she said, okay, she goes, don't worry about it. Let's just sit here for a minute, because we had heard some rustling and everything. And after that scream, that screech that we heard, that's when she said, get in the car. And then, I mean, she sounded like she wanted us to run and like freak out and go to the car. And I mean, so we did. We just did what you told us to do.
How far away was the car?
Oh, 2 feet, 3 feet.
No, it was like 50 feet.
It was not that far, Jen. It felt that far.
Well, maybe it was 25 feet.
It was probably 5 feet at most.
No, it wasn't.
We were sitting in the back seat, so maybe
that's
had
a real get to the chopper kind of moment, isn't it? I mean, I've always wondered what's going to happen if I ever bump into a big cat out here, and I'm quite relaxed about it in one sense. There have been no attacks, and lots of people have seen them now, thousands in fact, for the last 40 years. I think they're just pretty happy preying all the rabbits and deer and boar that we have. They're fine with that. People, we're stringy, aren't we? You know, we're not good meat, actually. And it's a lot to hide. So, well, I mean, I'm not that stringy myself, actually, but I'm hoping that they'll think I am. Guys, I guess we should probably finish it, but I had the most awesome conference, having the best time. Just before you go, where can people find you? How can they support you? And you know, you have things like books, you have little programs. Where can they listen to you talk?
Well, we were featured in, it's not our book, but we were featured in a coloring book, Bigfoot Explorers 2018, and that's actually our picture of footprints that we found. And at the top of the picture, that little dark thing, that's me standing at the bottom of the hill. And
those are real footprints.
Yeah, those are real footprints.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they were huge. Bobo from Finding Bigfoot looked at them and at the angle of the hill, and he said, without a doubt, that could not have been a bear. It's just too steep. And it could not have been a man because nothing put its hands down and just walked straight up. Now, Jenna and Nikki, our teammate Nikki, went up the hill next to these footprints, and they were crawling hands and feet, and they were sliding back down. There was like no space between their feet. But see, it's a coloring book. So there's Jenna and me, and there's like real stories about us on things that we've done in there. But I think that's really fun.
And is there a link to that on your website?
No, there isn't. But when we do events, we have them there to purchase.
Yeah. And I'll post the links to your web and everything over this interview as well.
SHE-Squatchers.com. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go to our Facebook page and give us a like there, because that's where we post our most up-to-date information. It's the most real-time stuff, where you're not going to get any real-time stuff on the website. So just say Facebook is where it's at. Yeah, and check out our YouTube channel as well. We're SHE-Squatchers Official on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes, and there's also a radio show. Don't forget the radio show, Jen.
TheJourneyRadioshow.com.
Yes, I remember it well. It's a wonderful show to be on, and I really enjoyed our little chat from there, actually. Well, girl, thank you so much. I can't wait for you to get over here to England and take you around, and of course we'll do all the typical things like, you know, crumpets and tea at the Ritz in London, and all the rest of it. Just around the corner. We'll have a great time. I'm going to say goodbye, but thank you, and come, please come again soon.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Stay in touch. This was so much fun.